Hi, I'm Chris McBrien, a Gen-Xer, and the pop culture from my generation is awesome.
And I'm Yancy Eaton, a Millennial, and the pop culture from my generation is dope.
Episode 25, Best Movie Soundtracks. Hey, Chris McBrien here, along with Yancy Eaton. As always, it's Pop Goes Your World, a pop culture podcast for the generations. This week, Yancy, we're doing something a little bit different. We're stepping outside the norm this week, and we're actually welcoming in somebody. We're bringing in a guest this week. So how do you feel about this? Is this going to encroach on anything you've got to say this week? What do you think?
I guess not. I mean, this person's kind of, I don't know, kind of a if we're going to be honest.
My goodness, he's one of our best friends. What are you talking about?
He says it out of love. I know it.
Yeah, that's what it is, most likely.
That's what I'm going to choose to believe.
Without further ado, let's bring him in. You already hear his voice. It's Sammy Reid. And Sammy Reid, you can find him on Twitter at Sammy Reid FL. He's a writer over at Fantasy Insiders, big baseball fan like you and me, Yancy. Obviously, that's where we know him from. And you also find him on the Baseball Holics podcast. Sammy Reid, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you guys so much for having me, man. I'm actually a huge fan of the show. I've listened to every episode, and I'm super honored to be the very first guest on the show.
Very first guest on the show. This is going to be something else. So, by the way, before we get started, we usually at the top of the show, we just mention something that's kind of been going on in our lives. I'm going to have you both kill me for something. Okay, here's the deal. Yancy, a couple weeks ago, you mentioned Westworld. You're like, man, you got to watch Westworld. It's the best show ever, okay? So I started watching it. My wife and I watched the first 3 episodes.
Okay.
I don't like it.
Oh, come on, man.
Sorry, man. I don't know, man.
We just started and you're having a bad show.
I know. Sammy, do you watch the show? Do you like it? I've heard so many good things about it. I desperately wanted to like it. I really wanted to like it.
I've actually not seen it. Yancey's tried to talk me into it, and Jonathan Nolan does it, and I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan, and they've worked together on a lot of films that I love, so it's kind of next on my list, but I can't hate you for it so far.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of hate tweets and emails and all that stuff for saying it, but I'm just being honest. I really wanted to like it, and I don't like it. I don't know. There's a couple things about it I don't like. I don't like some of the casting. I think Evan Rachel Wood is fantastic in it. Like, I think she's off the charts. So I was like, I'm really going to want to like this. I want to like the show, and I'm going to like the show, but I don't like the show. So I'm sorry. It's just the way it is. Anyway, you guys ready to get started?
Oh, yeah.
Yep,
all right, here we go. It's AT-ATs, not AT-ATs.
I do understand your reasoning with the whole hyphen.
So maybe it's an American thing, AT-ATs. I don't know.
I refuse to accept that, to be honest with you.
I'm going to go all the way to the top if I have to.
Until I hear it from George Lucas's mouth.
And we'll get an answer, but
I don't have anything to back it up.
It seems pretty conclusively that it's AT-ATs, not AT-ATs.
What? Are you serious?
Okay, so this week we are going to be talking about our favorite movie soundtracks, the best movie soundtracks of all time. So, as you know, Sammy, you've listened to the show. You said we usually do our top 5. We start 5 and we work our way up to 1. So we're going to do the same thing here. So you want to kick us off, Sammy? You're our guest. Why don't you go first? Your number 5 soundtrack of all time, and why?
I would absolutely love to. I actually just watched this movie last night for research purposes, and it's the 1993 high school film Dazed and Confused.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this is one of the great high school movies of all time. It takes place in 1976, and the classic rock soundtrack, I mean, it reads like a Guitar Hero set list, right? The opening montage, there's stoners smoking joints, and the jocks are making paddles in shop class, and the nerds are playing cards, and the whole thing is to Aerosmith's Sweet Emotion, one of my favorite songs for them. School's Out for Summer plays by Alice Cooper when all the kids are getting out of class and throwing papers. No More Mr. Nice Guy, Lowrider by War, when all the kids are searching for the party and they're driving around. Love Hurts by Nazareth. To me, it's not just that they're great songs, but each of them is really, it fits well with the scene and really describes it. Like School's Out. There's this great line in that song, we got no class and we got no principles. And it's just got this great double meaning. I love the film. I love the soundtrack. For me, my number 5, Dazed and Confused.
Oh, I like that. It's a very seminal movie, too. If you think of like Ben Affleck and Matthew McConaughey and Renee Zellweger, it's a very seminal film, Parker Posey.
All right.
I like it. I think that's a good pick. Okay, Yancy, over to you. Your number 5 soundtrack of all time. What is it, Mr. Millennial?
number 5 for me is from a movie that I actually did not know anything about going into it. The movie's only a couple years old. That's why I kind of put it number 5, because it's not like I've grown up with this film and watched it a ton. But I went into this movie with zero expectations, thinking that it was a throwaway comic book film, and it was actually one of the best movies I saw that year. And it's Guardians of the Galaxy. The soundtrack for that thing is absolutely phenomenal. And when you go back and look at it, they spent a lot of money on this soundtrack. It opens up with the scene where Chris Pratt's character is going through like this, this weird plan. He has like this weird mask on, so you can't see what he looks like. But he basically like turns on this song, and it's the whole soundtrack is like classic rock. It's basically like a playlist that his mom made for him back, whenever she was like on her deathbed. Basically, I mean, it has like the Jackson 5, it has David Bowie, it has the Raspberries and Blue Swede, it has Marvin Gaye. There's just so many like awesome classic rock songs that fits in with like this weird like futuristic Marvel universe. There's aliens and talking raccoons and like a gigantic tree, and like somehow all of these classic rock songs fit into it perfectly. Like it's the weirdest movie. Like I said, I didn't expect it to be so good, but all these like weird one-off songs from the 60s and 70s just fit so good for it. So Guardians of the Galaxy is my number 5.
Oh, very good. Now, the important thing for me I want to just mention is not just, when I'm talking about the soundtrack, it's not just like how good the songs are for me. I think it's also important that how they're woven into the movie, because
absolutely,
I take that into account when I'm ranking my favorites here. And I do want to mention, if I could just quickly, a couple of honorable mentions, because I'm going to get hate mail if I don't mention some of these. I think The Breakfast Club, I just want to give a shout out. Any John Hughes movies, pretty much for that sake. I also thought the Rocky Horror Picture Show had a great soundtrack. Like, everybody remembers the Time Warp, but for me, science fiction double feature, Damn It Janet, so good. My wife, I told her I was going to be doing soundtracks tonight, and she's like, oh, you got to shout out Top Gun and Dirty Dancing, but I don't like those ones, so I'm not going to mention them. Okay.
Top Gun is kind of corny.
Yeah. So, okay. Yep.
Sammy? You guys, first off, I just got to tell you, I was so excited to do this episode and hear what you guys were going to put as soundtracks. I mean, this is great for me.
Well, let me tell you, here we go. Because I'm the old guy on this show, Sammy. I'm the Gen-Xer, and I go way back.
That's good. I'm usually the old guy, so I'm glad there's somebody older, than me here.
Yeah, no worries. I'm the old guy, and I'm going to show my age right here. My number 5 is from 1977, and that's Saturday Night Fever. Okay? It is the most iconic movie of the disco era. I know that's not saying a lot, okay? But just, we're going to be on this one. Saturday Night Fever is the most iconic movie. When it comes to disco, although it's probably not my favorite disco movie. Yancy, do you have any guesses what my favorite disco movie is?
I do not.
It's The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh. But anyway, Saturday Night Fever, I think, is really important when it comes to the soundtrack, because Saturday Night Fever, it defined an era of the 70s. It defined disco, for sure. And like the other thing too is the Bee Gees, they were not involved in the film until post-production. So what happened was, Travolta and Pesco, they did a scene where they were they were rehearsing a dance number together, and they were actually doing it to a Boss Skaggs song. And the Bee Gees song didn't get added until post-production. So I think that's kind of important. But like I say, a film's soundtrack, is iconic to me when it represents an era, and Saturday Night Fever absolutely represents an era. So it's my number 5. Number 4, Sammy, what do you got?
No, that is awesome, and I have another John Travolta film as my number 4.
Oh, good.
And
is it the sequel? Is it the sequel, Staying Alive?
No, it isn't. Unfortunately, I'm sorry to disappoint
Please be
you.
Battlefield Earth. Please be Battlefield Earth.
But I really do love. One of the things I love about this show is we have the juxtaposition between the Millennial and the Gen-Xer, and I'm 36. I'm 36, so I'm like
Perfect.
right in the middle.
Oh, this is great. Yeah.
And so I'm hoping to add a new vibe. I know that you guys, maybe have skipped around on the 90s a little bit.
Yeah.
And I have a ton of 90s flavor. We talk all the time about 1994 being a great year for movies, also a great year for soundtracks. My number 4 is Pulp Fiction.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you were going to put Lion King there.
Which would have been a worthy choice. But John Travolta was not in The Lion King. He was in Pulp Fiction. I had to have at least one Tarantino film in here. This soundtrack, I mean, it's very eclectic. It went platinum. It's a mix of like Motown funk and surf rock. It's just, there's this great sequence about half an hour into the movie where John Travolta goes to his dealer's house and he ties one off, and then he's driving to Mia Wallace's house, and this song called Bullwinkle Part 2 comes on. Yep. And then he gets to Mia Wallace's house, and he's kind of sauntering around, and Son of a Preacher Man comes on, which is just beautiful. Uh-huh. And Mia Wallace is watching him on the camera, and she's snorting lines. And then they go to Jackrabbit Slims, and Rumble comes on, which is this great like guitar solo. It's just that Dun, dun, dun.
And then isn't "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon" woven into that scene as well?
It sure is. They do the dance. They do the twist dance to "You Never Can Tell" by Chuck Berry, and then they go back to Mia Wallace's house, and the whole thing is finished off by "Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon" by Urge Overkill, and she overdoses, and the entire sequence, you guys, is just captivating. You know, Tarantino's really a master at kind of captivating and weaving music to set moods. And for me, Pulp Fiction is the best example. That's my number 4.
There you go. Number 4, Yancy, what do you got?
Love it. I like that movie a lot. It almost made my list. It was going to be my honorable mentions, but couldn't fit in there. Number 4 for me, one of my favorite movies. I talked about this just recently, the Interstellar soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. I was doing some research for this on Hans. He's obviously a German composer. I didn't realize just how many movies he has composed. Like all of the Batman soundtracks. I mean, he did The Lion King. He did Inception. I mean, literally like 15 to 20 of some of the biggest movies we've seen in the last 20 to 30 years. He did the scores for them, and they're just hugely different, like animated films and serious films and romantic comedies and sci-fi and everything. He's just incredible. But Interstellar, obviously it's a space, like a futuristic sci-fi film, heavy, just orchestral music, tons of church organs. There's a really neat video on YouTube that you can go watch. It talks about like the making of it, where Nolan basically wanted Hans Zimmer to go in it blind, basically saying like, think about something that's slightly futuristic and like the relationship, the parallel between like a father and his son. But he didn't actually tell him that it was actually about the relationship between a father and his daughter, and like this weird, basically like going into it blind to create something where he had no preconceived notions of what this entire score is supposed to feel like. So basically the entire soundtrack is just like, it's like really electronic, mechanical sounds throughout the entire thing, and it builds heavier and heavier. And it like you guys are talking about how it kind of, a perfect soundtrack isn't just songs that you like. It has to like flow, and it has to make sense with what's happening in the movie with scenes. And with this soundtrack, I think it's just perfect. Anytime I'm building DFS lineups, I'm always listening to this, which is like a really weird choice, but I don't know what it is. It's just like all of the heavy just composition from top to bottom, like a huge arrangement, especially towards the end. It's a fantastic soundtrack. No words in it, obviously. No traditional, like guitar and stuff like that. All symphony, all orchestral stuff. So something I would go back and look at. So Interstellar is my number 4.
Because you're a millennial and we let you away with stuff, I'm going to let you away with this. But Sammy, I don't know how you feel about this. I'm not trying to call you out, Yancy, but I'm just wondering, like, because that Interstellar this is just a score, isn't it? It's not like, to me, a soundtrack is songs and a score is instrumentals. But I don't know.
It is an official original motion picture soundtrack.
In any other space, I would say absolutely this is completely cheating, but I love Interstellar, so I'm going to allow it.
Okay, we'll allow it. It sounds good. Okay, my number 4, going back to 1973, American Graffiti. So George Lucas's movie, obviously based on when he was a teenager, growing up, cruising around in cars in Modesto, California. That movie's all about the music. And the thing is, if you watch the movie, it's basically made up of like short little sort of snapshots of scenes. And each and every scene has a song playing in the background. And it was unbelievable because when they went to make the movie, it cost them $90,000 for the rights for all the songs that they used in the movie, and they had no money left for a score. Yancy, just so you know, a score is the instrumental part of the sound. But anyway,
I was a music major in college. But thank you.
Okay. Anyway, they had no money left for the score, so the rest of the movie is silent. There's no instrumentals. There's no score in the movie. It's very, very weird, but it really actually kind of sets a tone for the movie. I think it's very interesting the way it's done. Cool enough too. Just a piece of trivia: RCA is the one studio that would not give them the rights to songs, so as a result, no Elvis songs were in the movie. But it's all good because I think the songs that are in there are amazing. The soundtrack is fantastic, just the way it is. Number 3, Sammy, what do you got?
Yeah, and American Graffiti on its own is just an amazing movie.
Oh, it's wicked.
My number 3 is the only movie not from the 1990s. It's the 2012 musical Rock of Ages. Oh. And, maybe this is cheating because it's kind of a musical. Are you laughing at me?
Yes. Holy crap.
Let the man speak. Let's hear.
I love the soundtrack to this film. I think to me the coolest thing about it is that the actors and actresses in the movie sing all the songs. So you have like Russell Brand, Alec Baldwin, Paul Giamatti, Juliana Hough, Mary J. Blige, Diego Boneta, Catherine Zeta-Jones. And most importantly, you have Tom Cruise, who actually crushes Pour Some Sugar on Me and Wanted Dead or Alive. You know, it's just filled with all these great songs from the 1980s, all this, you know, hair metal and, you know, 80s rock. You have Paradise City. You have Here I Go Again from Whitesnake. You have REO Speedwagon, Can't Fight This Feeling. You have Don't Stop Believin' in Any Way You Want It from Journey. You have Every Rose Has Its Thorn. You have Rock You Like a Hurricane. And I just love this movie on its own for the music. You know, I was born in 1980, and this was the music of my childhood. So I absolutely love it. 2012's Rock of Ages is my number 3.
Good one. All right, Yancy, what do you got for your number 3 soundtrack of all time?
All right, when you said Rock of Ages, I was thinking School of Rock with Jack Black. That's why I had to look up. I'm like, oh, okay, my bad.
What, you don't like Teacher's Pet? Come on. Come on. Oh, man.
That movie isn't bad. School of Rock, it opens with Led Zeppelin, and like Led Zeppelin is notorious for not letting anybody use their stuff in films.
And it closes with AC/DC. You know, it's a long way to the top. But anyway, I love that movie. Anyway, what's your number 3?
Anyways, number 3 for me is from the 2000 American film of the same name, written, directed, and produced by the Coen brothers, and it is Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Nice. That's a good one, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris, for the validation. This is one of my favorite
Most importantly, because there's actually songs in it. But I mean,
yep, there are songs. Yeah. Yep. This is probably one of my top favorite 15 or 20 films, and just the soundtrack on it is just amazing. All the songs that are in it are completely original. The Man of Constant Sorrow, that is kind of like the song that everybody just immediately thinks of when they think of this movie. There was actually 5 different versions of this that they recorded that actually they make an appearance in different parts of the film. It's country, it's folk, it's bluegrass, it's blues. I mean, it's even gospel music. There's just so many different elements to it that work so well with the film. Like, you know, the upbeat stuff obviously is what people remember, but for me, like the one scene and the one song that works the best for me is when the old guy is singing during the whenever they see like the Ku Klux Klan. Remember, it's at night, like they're burning the cross and stuff like that, and the old man starts singing. Man, that just gives me chills. I used to own this soundtrack. I don't anymore, but I should buy it. But it's just a phenomenal soundtrack. So, Brother, Where Art Thou? Number 3 for me.
Okay, my number 3. Everybody cut Footloose, and I'm talking about the '84 Kevin Bacon movie, not that 2011 remake crap fest. There's some great songs in there. Obviously, the title track, Footloose. There's, you know, Almost Paradise, Holding Out for a Hero. And I got to make a shout out, even though it didn't make it into the soundtrack, big shout out to when Ren McCormick's driving around town in his Volkswagen and he's listening to Metal Health by Quiet Riot. Even without that song, the soundtrack to Footloose is really good. And I think Let's Hear It for the Boy is one of the most iconic songs of the 80s. The most iconic song for me, as I've said before on the show, is Don't You Forget About Me from the Breakfast Club. But I think Let's Hear It for the Boy is right up there in my opinion. So that makes my number 3. Number 2, Sammy, what do you got?
Love it. My number 2, we're going back to 1994. I would not be surprised if you guys had this at number 1. I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't have it on your list at all. But my number 2 is Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. Yep. Yes, oh, yeah. Sammy.
It's so good. I mean, you know, Forrest Gump is a movie that's very much about Americana, you know, in the 50s and specifically the 60s and 70s. And the one thing that it's great at is really capturing the mood of each era. And one of the ways that it does that is through music. And so this soundtrack is a 34-song, 2-disc soundtrack that is so diverse, right? It's got pop, rock, country, soul, rockabilly. You know, it's got Hound Dog from Elvis for the 50s. You know, Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds in the 60s. Sweet Home Alabama by Leonard Skinner in the 70s. And, you know, one of the really defining scenes in this movie is when Forrest and Bubba go to Vietnam. And the music that plays during this whole kind of montage is so great, right? You have Creedence Clearwater's Fortunate Son. You have All Along the Watchtower by Jimi Hendrix. You have For What It's Worth from Buffalo Springfield, which is probably like the most iconic Vietnam song ever. You know, you have all these artists. You have Elvis and The Doors, Aretha Franklin, Fleetwood Mac, Willie Nelson, The Beach Boys, Bob Dylan. To me, this is probably objectively the best soundtrack ever made. You guys may or may not agree, but it's not my number 1, but it does make my number 2, Forrest Gump.
Very cool. Yancy, number 2, what do you got?
My number 2 is also Forrest Gump, and I had to fight to not make it number 1. You mentioned there's like 34 songs on the official 2-disc soundtrack. There's also 18 songs, additional songs that make the movie that aren't in the official soundtrack. Like, remember, guys, whenever Jenny is like standing up, like she's like, she's high as a kite and she's standing on top of the ledge or whatever, like she's gonna jump, and they're playing Freebird by Leonard Skinner. I mean, there's that one, like you said, like the Creedence, playing Fortunate Son. CCR playing that, like whenever they're going to Vietnam, that's just like, I think of that every time I think of Forrest Gump. That's like the first scene that just automatically sticks with me. So there are so many songs in this. I mean, they even have like the Mamas and the Papas and like Jackson Brown. And there's like 5 Doors songs in this. Like I think there's at least 5. There's got to be. But I mean, even like older songs you're talking about, like that. Like rare B-sides and stuff from artists that we kind of remember, but not really, like Jimmy Gilmore and like Hank Williams, like stuff that my grandpa would listen to. Like it literally spans, it spans the generations like so nicely, and just every single song is kind of like in the background. It's like a fly on the wall. There are exceptions wherever like the music is at the forefront and it's driving the entire scene. But I mean, it just works so well in this. And you would think a movie that has so many songs jam-packed into it that it would be overkill, and it's not at all. Like, it completely works within the context of the film. So it's a number 2 for me. Could have been a number 1. I was getting scared whenever I didn't hear you guys mention it, but I'm glad to see that we got at least 2 of the 3 lists. So, Chris, what's your number 2?
So before I get to mine, before I get to mine, I did want to mention, I do have a little bit of a prejudice against Forrest Gump, and let me explain what I mean. So in 1994, I personally felt that Pulp Fiction was the best film of that year, and I was rooting for it to win an Oscar. I knew it wouldn't win because that's not the way that the Academy votes. And so Forrest Gump beat Pulp Fiction for best film that year. And I've always been kind of like, I don't know, I want to say down on Forrest Gump, but I'm like, Forrest Gump, is not the best film of that year. So I don't know. I guess it's a little bit of a bias of mine. Okay, my number 2, going way back, 1968, and that's The Graduate. Okay, Simon and Garfunkel. First of all, their song "The Sound of Silence." It had been around since '64, but Mrs. Robinson obviously written expressly for that movie. As a Gen-Xer, the movie's a bit before my time because it came out before I was born, but I don't think you can downplay how good it is. And like I mentioned before, how songs interplay with the film itself is very important to me. And there's not anything much better than watching Benjamin Braddock on the airplane and then standing on the People Mover while the Sound of Silence is playing at the beginning of the film to open the movie. It really establishes the mood of the film. I think the songs continue to interplay throughout the movie. And it's not even the Simon and Garfunkel songs, and like, okay, so just to diverse, we're talking about soundtracks, but since Yancy kind of mentioned score, I want to give a shout out here to Dave Grusin's score in The Graduate. And Dave Grusin in general, I think he was one of the best of all time. He had a style of his own, instantly recognizable. If you think of movies like On Golden Pond, Tootsie, My Bodyguard, Dave Grusin, his score was unmistakable. So maybe we have to do a whole show on score sometime. But anyway, for me, The Graduate is Michael Nichols. He did some amazing things throughout his career, right from, he started at Second City with Elaine May all the way up to Angels in America. But for me, The Graduate is by far his best work. So it's number 2 for me. Number 1, Sammy.
Oh,
we're there.
We have gotten to my number 1. I'll just throw out a couple of quick honorable mentions. Get 'Em to the Greek, Reservoir Dogs, Kill Bill 1, Pitch Perfect, which is one of my guilty pleasures. And the movie that I think Yancy has as his number 1, which I won't mention. But my number 1 is Boogie Nights from 1997. Oh, yeah. I love Boogie Nights, you guys. This film was made by Paul Thomas Anderson. It's a film about the porn industry in the late 70s in the San Fernando Valley. Have either of you guys seen this movie?
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
Hell yes.
Wonderful movie, yeah.
Oh, I love it. I didn't even like this movie like the first time or two I saw it, and as time has gone on, it's become one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just got like the greatest supporting cast I think that I've ever seen. Philip Seymour Hoffman, William H. Macy, Don Cheadle, John C. Reilly. Burt Reynolds and Julianne Moore were both nominated for Best Supporting Actor and Actress. And to me, what makes this film so special is that it really captures the ethos of the 1970s. And to me, it feels like this entire film is set to music. There are stretches where 3, 4, 5 whole songs play right in a row. And they're these really long scenes, and they're just super fantastic. It starts off with The Best of My Love by The Emotions in the opening montage. There's this great scene when Eddie first goes to Jack Horner's house, and it's, Mama Told Me Not to Come, which is, a great placement of a song by Three Dog Night. Spill the Wine by War, Lonely Boy, You Sexy Thing, and these songs are all right in a row. And you guys have seen this movie, you know what I'm talking about. My very favorite scene in this movie is at the end when Eddie and Todd and John C. Reilly's character, they all go to, what's his name, Alfred Molina's house to go sell the fake drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
You guys know what scene I'm talking about?
Correct.
Yep.
And they go there and they think they're just going to sell him a kilo of baking soda, and they walk in and he's just strung out. He's high as a kite. He's got this bodyguard who has 2 guns on him. There's this little Chinese guy named Cosmo walking around setting off all these fireworks. And, he's playing a song. He's playing his mixtape on the hi-fi system. And it starts with Sister Christian. And it's really slow, and it starts with, the piano, and then it builds up as the tension, starts mounting. And everybody's sweating, and fireworks are going off, and Alfred Molina's, pulling out guns, and it's all crazy. And then in the middle of this tense moment, it stops, and the tape switches over to side B, and it takes 5 seconds. And then Jesse's Girl comes on. And it's, a very tense song. There's a lot of angst in it. Stuff starts blowing up. People start shooting each other, and all this crazy stuff starts happening. I love this soundtrack. It's maybe not the soundtrack that I would put in my, stereo and drive around to and listen to myself. But I think it just so captures the mood of an era so well. I think it goes with the movie so well. I absolutely love it. My number 1 is Boogie Nights.
All right, Yancy, what do you got for number 1?
Really interesting pick. Of course I've seen it. My wife actually calls me Dirk Diggler at home.
Oh, my.
Hi-oh. That is a really interesting choice. Like you said, I don't know if I would just listen to those songs as a standalone, as a soundtrack, but they do work really well within the context of the film. But just a couple quick honorable mentions for me. Obviously, Pulp Fiction is incredible. Actually, I'm not going to... I wanted to mention Space Jam just as as
you love
aside.
that one, yeah.
I love the hell out of Space Jam, but, whatever. Anyways, I'll get to my number 1. It's obviously Purple Rain. We cannot record an episode of this podcast, Chris, without me mentioning Prince in some sort of fashion. Something crazy happened to me the last couple weeks. A really, really good friend of ours, a friend of the show, Shawnee Doo-Wop on Twitter, he hooked me up with 10 Prince albums that I did not have, sent them to me via Dropbox. These are albums that aren't even available for sale, so it's not like I could buy them if I wanted to. And I've just been binging on Prince. It's all I've been listening to. Obviously, I had Purple Rain before, but I'm just in this crazy, the last 8 months, literally 90% of what I've been listening to is Prince. The movie works. We've talked about it. It's, opening with Let's Go Crazy is just, it's perfect. It's absolutely this incredible, cathartic, just insane, just guitar riff laden, and it sets up the whole film. Everything about the soundtrack works. Some of the songs in the album itself aren't my favorite. I'm not a huge fan of Darling Nikki. I'm not a huge fan of I Would Die for You, but they just work so well, how they're laden inside the soundtrack, and it's absolutely beautiful. Prince is the man. I still get emotional talking about it. I still love it. I even wanted to put the Batman soundtrack in here just because I've been listening to that a lot too. It's not as good of a soundtrack, obviously, but I just love Prince.
It's U2 and Seal on it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. All right.
So that's my number 1. Any chance I can to mention Prince, I'm going to do it. So, and a special thanks to Sean. He listens to the podcast. Genuinely appreciate it. Seriously, my life has been transformed the last couple weeks. That's all I've been listening to is all these albums. So, special thanks to him. So that's my number 1, guys. Purple Rain.
Very good. Okay, my number 1. Not only is this one of my favorite all-time movies, but my all-time favorite movie soundtrack is from the 1980 comedy musical The Blues Brothers. I mentioned earlier, obviously the best soundtracks involve songs that, woven right into the movie. You don't get any better than this. So the movie opens up with John Belushi himself singing the opening track, She Caught the Katy. You got James Brown as Cleophas James doing Old Landmark. There's Aretha Franklin with Think. Jake and Elwood sing Sweet Home Chicago and Everybody Needs Somebody at the Palace Hotel Ballroom. And the big number for me is Ray Charles when he does Shake Your Tail Feather. The whole city comes to life, joins into the musical number. Anytime that I've ever done karaoke in my life, not that that's any, indication of a movie soundtrack's viability by any stretch, but I always will sing songs from the Blues Brothers. I absolutely love that movie, and I think it is my favorite soundtrack. I can listen to it over and over and over again, and I have. And that's my number one. So there you go, guys. We did it. And you know what? Big shout out to Sammy, too, because this was Sammy's idea to do movie soundtracks on this week's show. So we had to bring him on to have him do it. I thought that was great. Really good ones and not a lot of crossover. And I like the 90s input from Sammy. Okay, guys, it is time now that we have
Fun with Yancy.
Now, Sammy, I'm going to let you join in from time to time. I'll throw it over to you. But this is the time of the show where we try to, stump the millennial. We, mess with the millennial on this segment.
We try to embarrass Yancy. Just say it. We try to embarrass Yancy.
We try to embarrass Yancy a little bit. It's just fun. It's fun with Yancy, and that's the name. Fun with Yancy. So anyway, this week I'm going to make it easy for you, Yancy. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to mention a song, and I'll tell you even what. I'll even mention the year. So I'm going to give you the song and the year. All you have to do, mention the movie that the song is from. Okay? Really well-known ones. I'm going to start you off with such an easy one, going back to 1939.
You bastard.
It's Over the Rainbow.
The Wizard of Oz.
There you go. Congratulations. See, this is easy. Okay, 1987. I've Had the Time of My Life.
Oh crap! It's a corny movie.
Bill Medley, Jennifer Warnes. I've Had the Time of My Life, and I owe it all to you.
It's Dirty Dancing.
There you go. It is. It's Dirty Dancing. Yes. I'll cut you off right there. Congratulations.
I've never seen either, but... Okay.
All right, 1994. This one's right in your wheelhouse. I know you were 6 years old, but when you were 6, you went to see this movie, I'm sure. Can You Feel the Love Tonight?
The Lion King.
Yes, very good. Okay, 1984, the song by Ray Parker Jr. is Ghostbusters.
Are you asking what the movie is?
Yeah, what movie was it in?
Ghostbusters?
Yeah, it's Ghostbusters. That's it. Okay. I got to give you an easy one from time to time. Okay, going back.
This is like you saying, what was Tupac's real name? And it was Tupac.
Yeah, well, we did that before.
Oh, you're giving Yancy all the softballs, and when you ask me one, I'm totally going to flub it. I'm like, I knew all those.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to you then, Sammy. 1994, You've Got a Friend in Me.
I know it.
I know Yancy knows this one because you'd have been right around the age, Yancy. You probably saw this in the theater.
Randy Newman.
Yep, Randy Newman, and the movie, of course, is
You Got a Friend in Me.
That's right, Toy Story. Yep. Okay, and then one last softball one for you, Yancy. This one's super, super easy. Okay, I'm not even going to give you the year because it's so easy. This is a millennial one for you. Lose Yourself.
8 Mile.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. See, told you I was going to give you easy ones this week. Sammy, thanks a lot for joining us. Do you want to just remind everybody out there where they can find you online, what you're doing at your other podcast? Talk a little bit about it. Let us know what's going on.
Yeah, for sure, man. My friend Doug Thorburn and I do a podcast called Baseballholics Anonymous. It's our little brainchild.
Sorry. I just want to shout out to Doug, too, by the way, man. You Sammy, you're good. You and I have been friends for a long time. I'm giving you a shout out. But Doug, man, really knows his stuff.
He's so sharp. He's just so smart about baseball in a way that I don't think a lot of people are. He's been a friend of mine since college, so 18 years. I love that guy. He's my partner. He's got a lot of great insights. He's the co-host on Baseballholics Anonymous. And then I have my stuff on Fantasy Insiders on Twitter at Sammy Reid FI. And dude, I'll tell you, this was such fun to do. I'm a huge fan of this show. I'm so honored that you guys brought me on, and I'd love to do it again sometime.
Hey, man, it's been great, knowing you over the years, doing the baseball stuff together, and it was a natural progression to have you on this show. No two ways about it. Yancy, what's going on? Anything else in your life that you just want to give any shout-outs to, or what's going on? Are you going to force me? Should I really go back and give Westworld another chance after 3 episodes? What do you think?
I really think you should try.
Mm-hmm.
I do. I think you should try to expand your horizons just a little bit. Not everything that's new sucks. I mean, just try to open your mind up just a little bit, and I think you'll be surprised. You'll like it.
Can I just go back and watch the 1973 Yul Brynner film instead? Would that count? No? I'll tell you what. I'll make you a deal. I'll tell you what. I'll go back and watch the rest of Westworld when you finally watch Blazing Saddles. How about that? You watch Blazing Saddles?
Oh, Yancy. Unbelievable.
I know.
There are so many films I have not seen. Seriously. I do need to see it.
I'm telling you. You watch Blazing Saddles, and then I'll go back. And they're both Western related, okay? Totally different ends of the spectrum. But you watch Blazing Saddles, I'll go back and give Westworld another chance, okay?
All right. Well, hey, listen. Racism is in vogue again, so...
Oh, my.
Should we mention the date that we're actually recording this? January the 20th, 2017. All right. On behalf of Yancy Eaton, this is Chris McBrien saying thanks for listening to the Pop Goes Your World podcast, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thank you for listening to the Pop Goes Your World podcast. Continue the conversation on Twitter at @CMcBrien or at Yancy Eaton. Please consider leaving a review for the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.